My name is Grace Grinnell, and on behalf of the NAMI Farmington Valley Board, I want to welcome you to Coping During COVID. So guys, you remember when we thought this was only going to be a couple weeks shut down and our lives are going to get back to normal really fast? And how are we going to possibly survive a couple weeks being shut down? Well, look at us a year later, and we are still in this pandemic. So I think we could all use some better coping skills, how to manage our stress, and, just validate that this is hard. I mean, this has really been hard on everyone in different ways. So I'm really excited about tonight's presentation, and I'd like to introduce Deanne Anderson, who is an occupational therapist and co-owner of Creative Development in Avon. I met Deanne, probably about 12 years ago, and my youngest son was like 2, and she started working with him. And, I am just so personally grateful for all her help and guidance over the years. She is definitely one of the best out-of-the-box thinkers I know. She specializes in neurological dysfunction, visual and cognitive impairment, executive dysfunction, and educational advocacy. And tonight she is teamed up with Dr. Kathleen Webb, who is a psychologist and owner of the Greater Hartford Wellness in Avon. She works with children, adult, and families utilizing evidence-based treatments such as CBT, DBT, and trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. They both have a shared interest in supporting the needs of families, caregivers, teachers, and community members. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kathleen Webb and Deanne Anderson.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I don't know, Kathleen, if you want to start.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. And it gives me great pleasure to be with you all tonight. One of the things that is near and dear to my heart, in addition to working with children's, teens, and families, is really being able to connect with the community. And certainly during COVID, a lot of that kind of hit a stop sign, but it's great to be involved in this new version of connecting in the community. And so it's been different, but a learning curve, but it's all the same great, and actually increases our access to connect with individuals that we wouldn't otherwise. So it is a blessing in certain ways. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. Dan and I, we collaborate in lots of ways. We share clients. We've done work together here and there. And this topic tonight of talking about dealing with COVID, in my practice as a psychologist, since March, we're going to be hitting the year mark. There has been so many there's been so many themes and similarities and to a lot of what clients are bringing. And so that excites me with connecting with you tonight, because we're seeing this sort of across the board. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to sort of talk about what is going on, and recognizing that, gosh, we're not okay all the time, right? And that's okay. And really trying to adjust to all that, because it's not just a day or a week or even a month. It's now almost a year, and it's going to continue. So this is a very important conversation, and we're excited to hear from all of you that are joining us tonight. And we're hoping that we can share with you some of the work that we're doing with families. I'll also just say too, not in the credentials here, but I'm heavily involved in the work of Brene Brown. If anyone's familiar with her, I'm a certified facilitator of her work. And part of what makes me bring that up is a lot of that work is around the human experience, around vulnerability and shame and difficult feelings. And COVID is affecting all of us. And it's not just prevalent for a certain diagnosis or a certain kind of issue. This is a blanket experience. And so that training is really informing how I work with clients. And I'm excited to share a bit of that through you tonight as well. So Deanne, want to say a few words?
Sure. So, Kathleen and I have talked a lot about this, and we started actually talking about it when it was much warmer out and we could walk on the trail, socially distanced. But we have, really seen some similar things. And I think, one of the things in regards to Brene Brown is that, not only have we seen it with our clients and our families, but also with our staff and the people that we work with. And so Kathleen actually has done a lot with our staff, talking about shame and vulnerability, and Brene Brown's work, which has then informed what we've been doing in the clinic. And I think, one of the things that we have seen some similarities to, and we'll talk a little bit about tonight, is we're seeing more people coming to us who have anxiety. We're seeing, we saw that before, but we're seeing it even more so now. We're seeing kids who are remote learning and who are struggling with executive dysfunction. And I'm personally seeing that with my own child who's in high school and navigating that. And I think, some of the things around shame are related to that we're starting to see, is where people maybe before were not willing to talk about or address some of the concerns that they might have seen with their children or, in the family. But now, because they're living with it every day, it's really kind of in your face. And what am I going to do with this? And how am I going to deal with it? And so I think that's, one of the things that we've been seeing. And also that, access to services, whether it's mental health services, whether it's occupational therapy, speech therapy, whatever it is, as well as the services that are being provided in the schools, are not necessarily, everything's not optimal right now. And so people are seeking out services in many different ways. So we're going to start with maybe just some statistics that are out there right now about things that have been happening with COVID and have been found. I don't know, Kathleen, if you want to kind of.
Sure. So in digging here, it really actually reflects so much of what Dan and I are seeing in the work that we do with clients. And so anxiety and depression have definitely increased over time. One study, this is actually through CDC, 30% in adults, anxiety and depression has increased since pre-pandemic to the pandemic. We were having this great conversation too about Deanne and I, even just the shift to acquiring pets and getting some nurturance and love and care for pets, huge increases. And both Deanne and I are examples of that. We both have puppies in our households. We should take a poll who has puppies, our dogs. And so the same is true of children and adolescents, depression, anxiety, the incidence of, depression, anxiety, emergency room visits, inpatient stays, the need for higher levels of care. So individuals that, are struggling to begin with, and then just pile on this COVID and anxiety at COVID and everything that goes with it, these challenges, it's just putting a lot of us over the edge. And then I would argue too, that even folks that, hey, we're doing pretty good and get along pretty well, they're sort of at their limits too. And so everything, our baselines are just increasing and increasing. So, we have the lack of access to healthy outlets, right? Of activities and sports, and we think about children connecting socially. There's all the parameters, the restrictions at school, but so many healthy coping mechanisms have been taken away from us. Particularly right now, we're in the throes of winter, right? It's snowing every few days, and it's another thing.
And the lack of structure that goes around that. And I know we so often talk with our families about, transition is difficult anyway for the kids that we're working with, but we're dealing with transition, and our families and our children are dealing with it. And it's, if it's school, it's a remote learning day. And then tomorrow you're going to go to school, and then you're going to have a remote learning day. And then you're going to be in self-quarantine for 10 days. And then it's going to snow again. And you just cannot predict what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis, which becomes, that schedule is subject to change every day.
Right. And so while we advocate for lots of flexibility, it's like, okay, we got flexibility with being like shoved down our throats. Like, okay, let's pivot. And it's hard. I think one of the biggest things about this discussion tonight is talking about how it's okay to say this is hard, and it's okay to say, oh my gosh, I'm not sure what to do here. And so we're hoping that we can open this conversation to all of you. So one of the things that Deanne, did you want to say anything more about statistics? I mean, we'll have the credits at the end if you wanted to look up any of these articles that we
I was going to mention the chat, but I think you were going to do that. I don't know if you were going to mention that. We're
Okay.
just going to say that feel free to put comments in the chat, questions in the chat. If, we'd love to know kind of what people are looking for. You never know what people want to talk about, or maybe even if something that you did was worthwhile and it was beneficial and it helped in your situation. We feel like this is, not just about learning, but also learning from each other. So.
Right. And so certainly, Deanne and I have various things that we're going to talk about, but if this group is feeling like there's a particular piece that you'd like us to elaborate on, we're happy to do that. So feel free to jump in the chat. Okay, so moving along, this slide is talking just about the things that we're seeing and hearing from our children and families. We're overwhelmed, we're tired. Like Deanne said about the need to be flexible, negative mood, loss of patience, the things that used to come with ease, whether it's completing tasks or daily routines, it's hard and there's a struggle. And so that, and that impacts us the adults in a household all the way down to children. And it may look a little bit different in children and adults, but we're all feeling it. And, when things start to be hard, then the things like routines and habits tend to suffer as well. We may not sleep as well. Maybe we go to bed a little bit later. We're limited resources, we're taking in more screen time. We all know that that's not such a great thing for our health, but what do we have, right? So we're aware of some of the things that aren't so great for us, but then we're kind of resorting to that just to get some stimulation, or just to get through the day if we're not feeling so great. Certainly too, social contact is just so hard, and also one of the things I'm often talking about, probably more with adults than with kids directly, is, well, how do I make these decisions, right? Everyone kind of falls a little bit differently about what they feel is safe and what's not safe. And managing that, and also communicating that to children, and saying, okay, well, as a family, we're doing X, Y, and Z, and down the street, the family may have different ideas about that, and that's hard, right? It's really, really hard.
And I think that's definitely been an area too where, and I think is we're hearing from children who are, looking at things that they're seeing on Facebook or on social media, or they're hearing from somebody in school, and it may not be accurate, but it's what they're hearing and it's what they believe. And just that whole, what is true, what is not, what do I believe, who do I believe, is again part of that whole uncertainty.
Right. And then you'll notice too, just the last bullet, which could be a whole other, a conversation in and of itself. But for folks that have children that have some special ed services, the way special education services are implemented are very different, and it's compromised. And so what's that like to, if you see your child struggling, especially with remote learning, how do you navigate that? How do you help advocate for them? We can certainly talk a bit about that as well tonight, if the audience wants to.
And I have to say, I'm kind of just in relation to that. I have had a couple of meetings recently with parents and with schools, and just, having a FAPE, free appropriate education right now has been very difficult. But I'm at a point with some of the districts that I talk to, and with some of the families that, we're 11 months into this. I just feel like COVID can't be an excuse anymore. We've got to figure a better way, because we're going to continue with this. So, and one of the other, which I think you might have brought up, Kathleen, is, a lot of times that those struggles that we feel like we've gotten past or were happening a year ago or 2 years ago have bubbled back up with COVID. And so, sometimes, again, being overwhelmed and how do I deal with this? This was a problem before. We got past this. Why are we coming back to it again? Why is this an issue again? Going back to recognizing, well, it's coming back up because there is so much uncertainty, because there is such a lack of schedule. There is so many transitions. And so, we're reverting back to those practices that weren't so great, or those behaviors, and recognizing that and validating that, yeah, that is going to happen and it's okay. It doesn't mean that we're completely regressing, but it means that it's something we have to take care of.
Right. Well, and in terms of that, I think there's both, there's some real practical pieces we can talk about tonight that we will talk about, but there's also this human experience of like, how do we adequately address our emotional needs here? And again, it's, for us adults that are here in this presentation tonight, it's tuning into what we're experiencing, and then it's also trying to respond and address how our children are responding. And when I talk about just a starting place, is just going back to the basics about how does a human being, what are their needs met? How are their needs? How do we get our needs met? And so from an emotional standpoint, and where it's a lot easier to just sweep our feelings under the rug because they're kind of messy and they're abstract and we can't like turn them on and off like a switch, right? It'd be so nice. And during COVID, we are being stretched. We're being asked to do a lot of things that we haven't been asked before. And, just in terms of the lens of, as a parent, looking at our children, seeing their struggle and seeing what's hard, and most often with children, it's more in their behavior, and they may seem oppositional and they may be dragging their feet and kind of being a pain. This is where, when I work with clients, we're really encouraging them to just slow down, sit down with them and say, hey, I see you're struggling. What's going on? And create space to have that conversation, normalize what's going on, and saying, yeah, I know you got to be in school in your bedroom. That's not okay. That's not what your bed was designed for. Right. And it just normalizing the experience, naming the feeling, and perspective take. I think a lot of times, even with my own children, they believe, oh, well, my mom and dad, they don't get it. Oh, but we do, right? And I think we need to do it. We need to do a better job of saying, hey, yeah, I got to do this thing. I got to be on video too. It's so not fun, right? And then you got to see your face on video, and that's kind of weird too. And just really trying to normalize it, injecting humor in it, and then also too, we need to adjust our expectations of kids, right? And so again, just speaking to this whole like pre-pandemic functioning, right? Their functioning is going to be, it may have taken a few steps back, and that's okay. And it's sort of this, rather than, oh my gosh, where are we going? It's more of what's going on right now and today, and what do we need presently? And that's that piece around, okay, what's happening? Okay, we're stuck inside. It's snowing out. We have to be on a Zoom call. What do we need right now? Okay, how about a drink of water? All right. And we rub the back. And really what I'm referring to is the ability for parents to help co-regulate with your kids. If we're presenting and being there in a calm way and connecting with them, that's contagious. And so they're going to start calming down if we're calm, right? And I think it's just slowing things down and being and capturing those moments, those opportunities when we have them.
And I think
Um,
that, meeting them where they are, and we so often forget that we need to validate what those feelings are. And, we as the adults are just powering on. We're just doing what we need to do. I've been working since March, coming to work every day, doing what I need to do, or we're sitting on Zoom and we're in meeting after meeting, but we're really not connecting, and we're really not asking how everybody's doing. And we're not validating those feelings. I mean, I know for myself with my own daughter, I would walk into the house after she'd been on remote learning for the whole day, this one dimensional model of learning that she's not doing very well at, and she would be in tears like, can we go to Target, because I just can't sit here any longer. And just something as simple as that was important. And I, even though I been at work all day, I needed to recognize that, and validate that, yes, it's not easy for you. And this isn't what you're used to. And I can't tell you when it's going to change, but I can tell you that I'm here for you.
right. Well, and to, having flexibility with, as we're adjusting expectations of what kind of needs to get done or has to get done, really also adjusting how we take care of ourselves. And all this is done in moderation, but what do you need right now? All right, let's go get a snack, or let's get a little bit of a treat. Hey, let's have a hot cup of cocoa. I've had more cups of cocoa than I can remember years, but it's just these are the things, right?
Or things, or like, getting baking. Like, I know it's some of these things seem like, I when we talk about some of this stuff, I think sometimes people are like, well, okay, yeah, obviously, but it isn't something we would maybe typically do. Or just making dinner, and it doesn't have to be, it could be a grilled cheese, but just having that time to connect, to say, let's do something together. I'm with you. I'm here. Maybe you can't talk about it, but let's, again, normalize this experience, and be together. And it also gives them something to do. It helps them to learn those skills that are important for everyday life, and also to recognize that, I'm part of the solution.
Mhm, mhm. Well, and I think you hit on an important piece too of this, and we'll talk a little bit more. It's just finding new rituals and routines within your family. Again, TV is not the best thing in the world, but my family were, at least on a weekly basis. All right, well, what let's do movie night, and let's all come together and snuggle on the couch and watch a movie. I mean, those little things really do mean so much. They really mean so much. And so don't take those pieces lightly, those chances to connect.
And I think, in relation to that, I think a lot of people did this in the very beginning, and I don't think as many people are continuing to do this as time has gone on. But being able to connect with family members that maybe they can't see or they can't be close to. And I know, like, for our family, we did a lot of Zooms in the beginning, but now we haven't done any in months. And kind of going back to some of those things that we did also in the very beginning, that helped us get through. Because I think we're all feeling that fatigue right now. Like, oh my God, we are coming up on a year, and this was supposed to be 2 weeks, right? So what did we do? What did we do in the beginning that made us feel better? We have, hopefully, it's going to get sunny out and the snow is going to melt. But before it does, can we go out and snowshoe? Can we find a park that we're going to go to on every Saturday, and we're just going to do a short hike or a brief walk? There's plenty of places out there that have pavement where you can walk, and just even that activity level, getting your activity level back up again, because we have been sitting inside. Getting that vitamin D, it really does make a difference for us. And we're seeing that the studies are showing that not only parents but kids are not as active, and when we're not active, we're not moving, we're not getting what we need. Those endorphins aren't working, and it's not helping us.
Right. Well, and I would add there's a parallel process too, similarly around connection, that in-person connection with others. And so, you know, if you talk to my children, like, are we really going for another walk with our family? Really? Because that's what we've all sort of, in my family, that's what's sort of been the safe activity as a way to just at least see each other a bit. And so, you know, another point that I think is really important, and hopefully, you know, obviously as the weather gets a little bit better, maybe there will be more opportunities for this, is one thing that's true about now that we didn't know before is that we do have some data around what is working, what measures do actually keep us safe, right? And, you know, of course, with the vaccine rolling out, that's just going to be another layer of precaution and level of safety. But, you know, some of the hard conversations, and granted, I'm not going to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do about making the choices around safety, but I think it's a important consideration to weigh the risks and benefits of, you know, what your family is going through. And so if, you know, it's been months since they've seen some family members, you know, begin to start playing around with, okay, well, what circumstances do we feel comfortable with? I think these are the things that we need to start becoming more proactive about, because some of the negative things of being so isolated, gosh, those costs are becoming greater.
Mhm.
And so finding out that right mix of benefit and risk for each individual family.
Right. And it may be, you know, we've gone out and we've built snowmen, we've gone sledding, we've gone snowshoeing. But yeah, and you know, we're starting to see some of the kids that we're with who are doing play dates either virtually, where, you know, they're playing a game together, or where they're doing a play date and they're just both wearing masks when they're in the house, you know, at someone's house doing it, because that's what they do in school and that's what they're doing at home to be safe and comfortable. So, but it definitely varies.
Mm-hmm. So I see we have about 23 participants. Please don't be shy. Feel free to throw something in the chat if there's some particular topic that you'd like us to address or talk more about. But otherwise, we can keep going and sort of talk about general trends and general types of support that we're offering people when they come in and see us. So this next slide is what could we do to support ourselves? So this was very purposely kind of separated because, you know, I'm assuming a lot of us that are on here are parents. And so we're thinking about our kids and we're thinking about our families, but we also really need to think about ourselves. And so the same ways in which we need support and want the same ways in which our families need support, we need to support ourselves. And so some examples of that might be picking up the phone and giving someone a call and just checking in with them, or again, even just a brief in-person contact can make such a lot. It can take us so far in terms of filling our cup. One of the things that I use a lot, and this comes from the work of Brene Brown, is permission slips. And so to explain that a little bit more, giving yourself permission to, and that could be anything. So if you're in struggle or, you know, about to do something that's hard, you know, I give myself permission to not be okay all the time. I give myself permission to feel anxious, feel frustrated, just creating some space for yourself. Because one of the things that we've all had to do is be in this struggle, but still move on anyway, right? Have more stressors with us, and then we still have to do our job or show up or cook dinner or do whatever it is that we need to do. And so I believe that we can support ourselves and acknowledge how we feel and do things that we need to do. It's a matter of prioritizing ourselves, though. Another way of prioritizing ourselves is, really just trying to be kind to ourselves. In addition to identifying how we're feeling, is just really looking at how are we talking to ourselves? Are we beating ourselves up? I know for me, I'm very much a get it done, very driven to get things done. And, I'm just not getting things done the way I used to. It's just not happening as easily. And you know what? It's okay. The really critical things, they get done, and accepting where we're at any given time. Right. Yeah.
A couple of questions have come in. And we can both, I think, respond to this. How have kids reacted to telehealth sessions, or have you avoided them? We have had some really great success with telehealth. One of the things we've actually seen with telehealth is being able to work with kids in their own environments where sometimes they feel a little bit more comfortable. We work with a lot of kids who have feeding concerns, and we've been able to have them doing and making food and items in their own kitchens, and actually have seen some really great success with that. I think another piece of is being just able to do more education and kind of carry over with families. Sometimes it's difficult to do that in the clinic setting, and when I think people are living in it every day, it's kind of like, okay, what strategy can I use, and how can I implement that at home? And so, we feel like in a lot of ways, telehealth has been really beneficial for a lot of the kids doing telehealth.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say one of the benefits of telehealth in my practice is it has decreased barriers to accessing care. I think about when we were doing exclusively in person, it's the, scheduling and getting a ride, and families often have multiple children. And so how does a parent get their kid to therapy and then get their other child to somewhere else? It really has cut down a lot on that. And, like a lot of us, sometimes our families are quarantined, and then some of us, maybe some family members are sick, and so it's not such a great idea to go to go to an office, and so it really cuts out a lot of those things that would naturally be cancellations on our schedule, and so it does allow some continuity.
And I think the other piece that we started to do in the very beginning and has been successful is being able to do those social groups, and being able to, for kids who don't necessarily want to be on video and don't want to participate, and who have really been able to actually improve their social interactions by interacting with through a telehealth session with maybe one or two other clients. So it's been nice to be able to see that evolve as well.
Right.
How are you addressing ADHD and anxiety diagnosis from school remote learning perspective? Things have been exacerbated by remote learning, the social isolation, what can help it? I know from our perspective, we have seen many more children who are coming to us with ADHD. We are just in general across the country. There are more children who are getting diagnosed with ADHD. There are more children who are going on medication for ADHD. I know I can just my own personal experience. My daughter started seeing a counselor in the summer because she was struggling with COVID. Her always thought there was some ADHD stuff, and it really became prevalent with the remote learning. And it was every day, I'm stupid. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. And it became a real struggle. And I know, we got a diagnosis, talked about medication. And I think, I used to think very much like, well, I don't know about medication. I am of the perspective, and this is my own personal opinion, but that you can always stop medication. It's not something you have to do. Talking with your child, I think, is important about what do you think will be beneficial, what can help you. And I know for myself, when I got a text message from my daughter that said, I don't feel stupid today. Like that broke my heart, but also made me feel like, okay, this was the right, the right way to go. But also one of the other things that we're doing is we're finding that those kids who struggle with ADHD, Google platform is a big piece for a lot of these kids. And to try to find what assignments are past due, are due, it's if you can't be organized, it doesn't make it easier. And so really helping them to understand, as well as communicating with their case managers and their teachers at school, and helping them to get other supports in place that maybe they didn't have before. Because Google can be a great platform, but it can also be completely overwhelming. And when they have 5 classes and they've got to figure out and stay on top of all of the assignments, it is overwhelming. I don't care if you can find it on Google, you can't find it. It's really difficult. And so really working with them specifically on, okay, bring that to your session. Let's look at it. Let's pull it up on the screen. I mean, I've worked a lot with some college kids during this time. How do you access the library for the college if you need to do it? Has anyone helped you with that? So really trying to look at their everyday, where are they breaking down? What do they need the most support with? And then really walking them through it. It's not one of those things where you can just show it to them and then they're going to, okay, I've got it. It's really helping them to learn it, understand it, and generalize it, and then also be able to advocate for what they need. And that's kind of some of what I've seen.
Right. Well said, Deanne. I think so much of it is individualized. And so especially if there's any of you that have children with ADHD or any other diagnosis, I know for me personally, seeing my children be remote learners, I've learned so much more about how they function as students in these new ways. And so I think it's walking through step by step. I think a lot of it is that communication, and obviously depending on the age of the child, figuring out the lines of communication with teachers. I feel like, teachers do want to know what's going on the other side. And so it's in trying to work more directly in tandem with them of like what works, what doesn't work. I think one of the other things too that, especially with, ADHD and anxiety, I mean, is that, to speak to the Google thing, the Google Classroom, it's just this laundry list of all the things that are due, or everything's there, right? Oh my gosh, it's like, it gets overwhelming so quickly. And so just like anytime we feel overwhelmed, when we look at it all, it's too much. And so it's trying to figure out, how do I zoom in on like, just, okay, what is one thing I can do right now? And so getting into that practice of, rather than look at the 10 things I have to do, what can I do right now? And just let's focus on the next 30 minutes right now. And sometimes we'll shift to, let's just make a little written short list here. We're just gonna make it more bite size and make it feel more manageable. And then maybe checking in with a parent if they're remote learning, and just to see how things are going. And then you go to the next step. So just streamlining it is a very quick, but often it can be relieving.
And I'm going to just pull up just something really simple that I've used. I actually used it with a high school student this past week. If I can show you or not. Let's see. And it may seem really, well, this is really simple, but finding, our strategies are not always what our kids' strategies should be. And oftentimes we say, well, use this or do this. This is going to work for you. If you label this, or you take the whiteboard and you put all of your assignments, it's got to be what works for them, because they've got to learn to carry it over. And we want, we're talking about COVID in this pandemic, but we're also, all the research shows that when a child can self-determine what their needs are, that's what's going to make them successful in life, in post-secondary education. So like I had a student on Friday, and I said, what would work best for you as far as a planner? Well, I have the one they gave me at school. I don't use it. I have my phone. I can't keep everything on my phone. So I laid out 3 different ideas and 3 different options. And so she's like, oh, I like this because it's really simple. And so we filled it in, based off of her Google Classroom and her assignments. But something as simple as that can make a difference, or having, big Post-its at home that are in the room. Those are really simple strategies that can be really beneficial.
Right. I definitely like what you have to say about their input in it. Case in point, just this afternoon, there's a lot of things about my kids that, they're really good at, but they're kind of slipping back into some kind of regress. They're forgetting things. They're not doing things that they used to do. I had them create just a little checklist of routines of like, okay, well, what do we do? And so then they're part of it. And so then they can feel like they own it rather than a parent telling them what to do and being told. It just doesn't feel, they get more investment in it if they're part of the process.
I think the equine therapy somebody mentioned is ideal. And I think that's another one of those activities that if we can do an activity that is going to get us moving our body, getting our joints and our muscles moving, it's going to make a difference for us. And equine therapy is a great example of that. Being able to do that. One of the questions or one of the notes is, how do you address a young elementary school child's anxiety? We're doing remote learning. The anxiety is much more prevalent, even though she's doing great at remote learning. And noticing nervous tics and facial expressions, repetitive behaviors. One of the things that becomes a factor when it comes to remote learning is elementary age children are not supposed to be visually stuck to a screen for the length of time that they are stuck to a screen. And they're just not wired for that. They're supposed to be moving, engaging, working all those sensory systems in a way that they can take in more information. And so yes, you can be, successful, but the demand, the physiological demand on the body when you are sitting here doing this is significant. So definitely one of the things that you can certainly try to do is really infusing that movement within the day. Having like I have a ball. Having a therapy ball that you can sit on that can be your seat when you're remote learning. Having crunchy, chewy snacks that you can have when you're remote learning. Getting your body moving when you maybe can't be actually moving. Getting a TheraBand or something that you can stretch, that you can move, a fidget, so that you're getting that body engaged. When there's a break, not just sitting and going and watching TV, or like really getting those joints and muscles moving, doing some yoga, doing some bear walks if you can. There's lots of different physical things that can help. We often will have body socks. So this is like a Lycra band, but a kiddo can get inside of it and they can stretch it and move their body, and it just gets and activates all of their joints and muscles. So those are some of the things that can really be beneficial. And I think also, being able to, even when, kids as young as 3, 4, 5, you can say, what do you think is the most difficult part of this? And oftentimes they can actually tell you what is the most difficult part of this. Is it that sometimes because your face has to be on the screen? That sometimes is what is really anxiety provoking. So what are the factors that are causing the stress too?
Right. Yeah. And I think just tapping into what your children's interests are and having things at the ready. For whatever reason, my child really loves to play with cardboard. Who knew? So we have lots of creations. We got creations all the time. And so that there's that creative, just anything that's going to engage their hands. Certainly we definitely need the physical movement, like the gross motor movement, the way Dan is talking about, but even just depending on the schedule and what's going on, even just the ability to kind of take a break and just get away from the screen for a few minutes and just be working with our hands and making stuff. It's so important, or playing with their dolls or having their preferred activities handy. And And sometimes it's and it can just be like just a quick reminder, like, hey, why don't you do some coloring or drawing for a little bit, and just to take a break. All those little small things really do count.
And music can be a real
Yeah.
a benefit as well, and different types of music. You know, some kids will do really well with loud head banging, like lithium satellite radio, or it can be something that is, you know, really calming. But music through headphones can be very beneficial with kids as well. One of the other things I just reading in the chat too is, you know, that recognizing that school isn't everything right now. And I know, you know, my 10th grader is worried about her SATs and PSATs, and I'm never going to get into a college because I can't do this. And I, you know, this is not the most important thing in life right now. We need to think about other things. And I think recognizing that, and again, having that conversation, I think we don't ever, I know I feel this way anyway, we don't realize how significant it is to just validate feelings, or to just validate how a child is feeling, or a family member is feeling. I do it all the time at work. I never do it at home. And it has so much weight, and it can be so significant. We just don't always ask the question, you know?
Right. Actually, that makes me think of a really helpful resource I want to share with everyone. And so it's at validating feelings and naming the feeling. I don't know if you all are familiar with the work of Mark Brackett. He's out of Yale. What is it? Emotional intelligence. And he has all this curriculum that's offered social emotional learning through schools, but he has a fantastic app. It's called the Mood Meter. And it's very user friendly. It is $1 to buy, but this is really user friendly app where you can help clarify a feeling. So, you know, we all know mad, sad, and glad, right? But we are much more dynamic, more dimensional people than that. And so this app allows to expand our vocabulary around feelings and emotions. And in it, so it's kind of fun. You can track and find and just identify what 3 words are nailing your emotion. And then it keeps track every time you go in and name the emotion. It says, what are you doing? Do you want to change that? And so it tracks like the time of day, the activity, and then the frequency of certain emotions. And so that has been a tremendous, it's been a tremendous tool for a lot of my clients that, especially if we're feeling like really out of control, we're not sure, we can look at patterns about where our emotions are popping up, what activities are provoking emotions. And then that allows us to target a little bit more about areas of challenge.
And one of the things that we've done with that, and it's in the resources in our handout, which you guys will all get, is using the zones of regulation. And so even as simple as this, where you have something on your refrigerator, or you have a big whiteboard, oftentimes I'll make it look like a thermometer and have kids color it in. And then, you know, we'll identify, so you're in the blue zone right now. Well, what happened? Like, what were you doing that made you feel that way? Or you're in the green zone, which means you're in a good place. So why are you in the green zone? What is it that makes you feel that way? Yellow zone, you're kind of at the point where it's like caution and, oh my God, I could blow at any moment, but I'm not, I'm still holding it all together. What is it that puts you there? And then red. And oftentimes what we'll do is we'll talk to families and say, you know, putting that, what puts you in the red zone or the yellow zone, and having your child do the same thing, so they can see that these are all normal emotions that people have. We all have them. It's how we manage them and what we do with them that really makes the difference. One of the other things that was a question, and I think actually Kathleen and I talked about this today a little bit, that hearing from NAMI that the call line, that a lot of parents are hitting the wall trying to find providers. And I definitely feel like from our perspective in our practice with pediatrics, with occupational therapy, oftentimes people see occupational therapy as, well, it's handwriting. What do you mean you're not doing that? I'm as far away from handwriting as I could ever be. You're not really going to see me doing that. Because we look at the whole person, the social, the emotional impact, and we look at all of those factors that are impacting that child. And so we're really looking at all of the underlying pieces for a child. And so we look at that, the zones of regulation. We look at how they're feeling. We look at how their executive function is playing into what's happening. We look at how their visual system is impacting what they're doing. And what we're seeing, going back to kind of what the original question is, we are seeing more people accessing our services now because they're not able to necessarily get that mental health support, or it's also less threatening. And their insurance will cover it, whereas maybe the mental health piece won't be covered. I'm sure, Kathleen, you can speak to this too.
Yeah, the need is the demand is definitely higher than the supply, right? And I've actually had a lot of recent conversations with just colleagues in the area, and even as if when I answer the phone on my end in my practice, it's if it doesn't work out when someone calls me, I really try to help them connect with another name or another. So I'm just not a dead end. And there are so many, there's the financial, there's the proximity, there's the schedule. So I, as a mental health provider, I'm well aware of it. And one of the things that I want to been talking with a number of folks, colleagues in the area, and in order to access mental health a little bit more, it might be worth also considering. It may not look exactly the way if you're looking for services for your child, it may not look exactly what you think. Like Dan was saying, like how can an OT really help me? Well, if you envision maybe doing individual work, maybe considering a group for your child, there's a lot more space in groups, and we're able to serve more people. And so I know of a provider right now who's putting together both elementary and teens. She's looking at the interests. So if you're interested, you can certainly reach out to me and I can connect you with her. Another thing that is supposedly popping up soon is a parent support group to support their kids during COVID. It's going to be free of charge, out of a practice in Farmington, the Family Resource and Development Center. And so I think we're trying to think of creative ways to meet, and different types of ways to meet needs, but it's definitely hard, and we're all really, really feeling it.
And I think, in our practice, we certainly see some of those kids who are younger, or some of those kids who just really struggle with talk therapy, being able to sit there and actually just talk to somebody. So being able to actually move and do. And so, you're climbing up the ladder, or you're making an obstacle course, or like I was working with a client last week, and we have a workshop where we also are doing some furniture and upcycling, and he's a high school student. And I said, do you see the 3 projects that you have all in process right here? This is just like your schoolwork. And I said, but what's different about it? And he's like, well, I can see all of this. I said, right, in your schoolwork, it's all out in that Google Meets or Google Classroom, and you have no idea. And I said, and so this is what happens. And then it's like, what have I started? What am I in the middle of? And what do I need to finish? And then it's very similar. And so in some ways too, we're able to show our clients, like, this is make parallels to an activity, or whatever you're doing or building or making, and this is how it relates to real life.
Yep.
So, and let me come back to where we were at for sharing. Yeah.
I can't remember what we were actually speaking to. We're talking about mental health services and accessing services. And so I think just thinking a little bit more outside the box, or being open to all different types of services. Yeah.
And, we also want to open it up to questions. I don't know if, some of these are just some of the strategies that we've talked about. Just wanted to put this is another piece for the, from our PowerPoint, but, don't throw out those strategies that you've used in the past that you haven't had to use. Go back to them. It's okay. Some of those things that you tried or maybe have tried once or twice, and be consistent and see if that makes a difference. Assuring that you do have some time in your day for activity, like Kathleen said, creating a new family ritual. I have a friend who they did a dinner night, and everybody got dressed up and they had a theme once a week. And that was something that they did. Another big thing too is, and I know we're talking about this at the beginning, but that remote learning space. And you can have 4 people at home and you've got 2 kids who are remote learning and you've got 2 parents who are remote working, and really trying to think about, is there a way to make that bedroom space not my workspace for school? I know that when you're in there for the majority of your day and night, it becomes a problem. And you feel like you're kind of trapped there. So really looking at that and considering, is there a way to work around that? Kathleen talked about the screen time limitations, and really looking at that and not having that screen time in the evening. That validation, of course, the zones of regulation, the managing the emotions. Sometimes, again, using visual timers, like, you have homework to do, let's set our visual timer so that you're only going to do it for this amount of time, and then you're done. And even the time management piece, this is great for kids with executive function, whether they're adults or whether they're young adults or elementary age, but being able to see the elapsed time really makes a difference. Social stories can be really helpful, talking about what's coming up and what are we planning. But again, the schedule is subject to change. That's always kind of a caveat that you have there. Using checklists, that whole sleep and bedtime routine is important too. And sometimes too, even because there's so many things running through your mind, journaling, or maybe if you can't journal, just talking about them before bedtime, getting them all out, like doing a brain dump before.
Right. There's actually a lot of brain research on that whole function of telling the story. It's predominantly around, trauma work, but it has everything to do with our everyday lives too. About, I just sometimes I feel like at bedtime, it's sort of like it's like the true confessions hour sometimes in my house. Sometimes I think they're stalling just to go to sleep. But but I learned so much. And so they just, my children, and this is true of my clients too, we just start talking and, asking sort of like questions, well, tell me more. And what was that like? And then it just kind of unfolds, and there's something so relieving about that. I mean, think about when you are having, confiding in a friend and you're talking about something that's on your mind, how good that feels for us when we've kind of gotten it off our chest. The same is true for our kids. And so nowadays, I mean, it might be just that, yeah, Mom, well, I didn't have the sheet that I needed, and then I lost track, and I was totally lost, and then I checked out, and it's just them being able to just talk that through and hear, yeah, that's hard. I mean, I think one of the things that I tell parents all the time is, you as a parent, you are their biggest asset in terms of a resource, of a coping mechanism. They want your time and attention. And so I know that it's hard. Like that end of the day, I'm super tired. I kind of just want to check out too and just decompress. But sometimes just staying in it to get through that conversation, it really makes a big difference. Okay.
Wanted to see if anybody wanted to open it up to any questions or thoughts.
Yeah.
There's any other things you'd like to talk about?
If you want to unmute and ask a question, you can go right ahead and do that.
Really. I'd be interested to know if anybody has found any difficulties with working with their schools and or their teachers. I think, you know, one of the things I've found is that there's some teachers who are really great at remote learning, and then there's teachers who are, we're going to talk about this for 5 minutes and go ahead and finish your work and do it on your own. And our kids are just not equipped to do that all the time.
Well, I think I found with my son, he doesn't always like to have to show up to the Zoom class. So his school, I am very thankful, has been able to say, okay, well, here's your assignment, check in, and then he can get off the Zoom and do the assignment and then check back in. The only problem we have is that it's, you know, his school's in his bedroom. And I can't tell you how many times I get a text where I'm somewhere else in the house and I'm thinking he's at school and they're like, Jack hasn't shown up. And I go in and Jack's in his bedroom. He's in his bed, but he's not on the school kind of thing. And sometimes I think he just gets bored. He gets tired. He needs a break, you know, and that's great. But I can't constantly be checking and going in his room, making sure he's actually sitting, you know, at the desk, because I can hear sometimes the class is going on, but he's just, you know, he's in the room, just he's on his bed, not at his desk, not participating, you know. So I think that is sometimes I find challenging, and I'm not sure whether I think I like it better that he just has to complete his assignment, but I also want him to be engaged in the classroom. And, you know, I think that's definitely a struggle.
That's definitely something I've seen too, is that, you know, some of the, some kids, and I have a kiddo I work with who really is very happy to be doing remote learning, but he is the last child that really should be doing remote learning, because socially he needs to be with other kids, because this is making it almost easier, you know. And so that's a concern, you know, and what happens with, you know, our kids who are either in a classroom setting and then they have to go into the breakout with 2 other students and they really aren't participating, or they just aren't even in it, or they're just doing remote learning and they've been doing it since March, and it's having a negative impact from a social perspective. And how do we pull those kids back into the fold, because social is difficult as it is, and now, you know, it's kind of like feeding into it. So that's a
Right.
concern.
And then like you say, the whole flexibility of bouncing back, for like, he prefers at his new school to be in person, but when he has to do remote or a snow day or something like that, that's when he's like, well, you know, I'd rather be there. It's more, to him, it's more fun to be in school in person. So when you just have the assignments remotely, you know, that's where, and it's also, he's in his bedroom. He can check out way easier.
I'm hearing a lot of parents call us up to tell us that their kids are video gaming while they're supposed to be. You know, they're like Grace said, they're locked away in their room, and you hear noises and you hear things going on, and you walk in and it's not exactly what you thought was going on. And a lot of video game playing has been, you know, problems have been exacerbated by the fact that the kids are in their rooms.
Right. And for some kids, that's the only way that they can connect with other kids.
Yeah. And we try to explain that too, that in itself is a way of connection.
And I do think that we have to remind, you know, not only ourselves and our kids, but also those people who are educating them, that this is, and I hate using this, but it is an unprecedented time. I'm sick of that word. But you know, our kids need not just to worry about the academics, but there's other things that are impacting them. And there has to be a little bit more flexibility sometimes on their end. You know, sometimes it's academic, and we need to address how they're feeling and how they're managing it as well. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and to that point, I think there's dare I say, there was something on social media I saw, but it really nails that perspective around what we're asking our kids to do. It was about a mom trying to homeschool her child, and she couldn't get him to do the things that the teacher used to be able to do for her child, that her child used to do. And she just had this moment where, you know, the child broke down in tears, and I can't do this. I can't do this. And she had this conversation with him to say, do you know that you're being asked to do something that no kid's ever been asked to do? You're kind of a superhero.
Yeah.
And it's really true.
I mean, we're all being asked to do things that we've never done.
Yeah. And it just opened up, and she said the weight just lifted off her child's shoulders. And you know, and that's brings me to another point too. I think one of the things, especially around anxiety, I think our kids assume that, like, oh, well, you know, oh, my mom and dad, they can do all this stuff and it's so easy for them, and they don't get it. You know, I try very hard to let them know about things that I'm nervous about, or I'm anxious about, or things that I don't like, because I need to model to say, yeah, I've got these feelings too. But you know, it's not going to stop me though. I'm going to feel these feelings, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that kind of helps that whole resilience and self-sufficiently, that, because I think a lot of kids, oh, if it's hard, I can't do it. Well, yes, let's talk about how you're feeling. What are you saying to yourself? Okay, are there nicer things that you can say to yourself, or more helpful things? Can I be nervous and still put my video on for class? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, that's in line with a lot of the work that I'm doing with kids too, around that anxiety you were talking about, Dan, how kids show up. I mean, addressing social anxiety on the classroom interface, right? And you know, the goal is maybe raising their hand or speaking in a live class, right? Whereas before it was a totally different goal. It's trying to adjust those expectations and those challenges.
Right. And I always say to the kids, what's the worst thing that will happen? You know, and sometimes the worst thing that will happen, they'll tell me what the worst thing, and I'll say, okay. And so what would that look like? What would you do? And you know, sometimes just being able to talk about that is important. And their worst thing that could happen is, you know, the teacher will call on me, or I won't have the right answer, or, you know, but I think we have to ask just simple questions. And we don't always do that. So, yeah. Anything else? I hope this was helpful and beneficial. And I think, you know, a lot of us are doing things that we don't realize that we are superheroes. We've been doing this for a long time, getting through, and we need to give ourselves credit for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. So
I have a question.
Sure.
How strongly should we be encouraging our kids to connect with their peers if they kind of seem like content with playing with their siblings, and then don't really want to go down that avenue with connecting with peers unless it's really encouraged by me and my husband?
Are they peers that they've typically been engaged with, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's still like enjoyment in doing it. But I think it's almost like my kids have connected so well with each other during this time period that they'd almost, which I love,
Yeah.
like they would rather spend time with each other than, you know, FaceTiming a friend or what have you.
I know, you know, from one of and I'm sure Kathleen, you have stuff to say about this, but one of the perspectives I kind of look at is, and I work with a lot of kids who have some social difficulties just being able to navigate the social situation and how to talk to peers and how to, you know, not appear as if you don't care, but that you still want to be engaged. So I think it depends on the child's age, and it depends on, you know, is that going to impact their relationship with that person? Is that person, especially the way social media is, the way kids are texting, et cetera, is it something that is going to negatively affect them and their relationship with this person? And what is necessary to kind of keep it going? Because I certainly don't spend as much time with my friends as I was before, but I'm still engaged with them at a certain level. And I think in some ways that's important, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's number one, that's amazing. Your children really like to hang out with each other and play.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they have their moments.
Yeah. Well, and you know, again, don't know their ages or you know, your other children's ages, but I do think it is important to maintain and sustain relationships, even if it's something that you kind of have to nudge them to do, because their peer relationships, that peer is at their same developmental level, and the way they relate to each other, and the skills, the social skills that are being practiced with a same age peer may not be the same as the skills and negotiating that they might do with siblings, right? And
Yeah.
so it's good to continue those opportunities of like problem solving and negotiating, and two, you know, when you're with your friends, you may talk about things in different ways that you wouldn't with your siblings, and you might learn, you know, and your child might learn about someone else's family and what their household's doing. So I kind of see it as sort of like it's like a muscle that needs to get stretched and not be neglected. Again, all within reason and whatever you're comfortable doing so in terms of contact with those friends.
Yeah, I totally get that. Thank you.
Awesome. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just typing. I have a question. I wondered if you had seen cases where a child was affected by his or her parents, one or two of their parents I don't want to say overaction to the virus, but you know, if they are really truly so overwhelmed by it that every activity in the house is around cleaning every surface and, you know, avoiding everything. I would think after a while that is not really healthy for a kid, and you might, I just know a family where I can see that happening. And I wondered, you know, if you have to help parents out who are, you know, taking it a little too far, or just, you know, their kids are hearing all this stuff and getting way too scared.
Right. Well, I think that's a great point. And certainly I get the feeling, and this is true of lots of us, right? With other issues too, you know, kids tend to latch on to the beliefs and feelings that their parents have, right? And so if there's this intense fear about the virus that the parent is exuding and showing, and you know, we can't do this, we can't do that, clean. Yeah, that absolutely gets internalized. You know, in terms of the families that I work with, it is a very delicate conversation that I have with parents to say, listen, I'm not going to tell you what's okay or not okay in terms of risk. That is totally your thing. And there's no judgment about the choices you're making. It is an individual choice all the way. However, I just, you know, there are some real costs here. And so if your child is really isolated and hasn't seen another child in person for a really long time, I think, you know, this, and this, that's, you know, these struggles are contributing to it. And so that's that cost, the cost benefit, the risk benefit, about it. And, you know, and like I say too, I mean, we have figured out a lot of things. We know so much more about March than we did in March.
Yeah.
And so there are certain things that we know are reasonably safe. And so, and it's that, can we be a little flexible, try it out, right? I know a lot of people, it's been so hard to find a boundary. It's like, it's hard to find the boundary, right? And then you're like, okay, our family, these are our boundaries, right? And then we don't want to be judged, or we're worried about how we're being perceived by other people. Should we make a different choice? But, you know, it's this evolution of how we need to exist. And I think as long as you're making the decision that feels right within you, like that's where you land, right?
And I think one of the things we've run into and what we've done is just giving kids the opportunity to just express how they feel about it. You know, like, you know, someone will say, well, this is what I heard, or this is what we're doing. And I'll say, well, how do you feel about that? What do you think? You know, how does that make you feel? What do you think that makes sense based on what you've seen? And then I also talk about like what we have done and what we do, like even in our clinic, and even like how my own feelings have evolved over time. You know, if you had said to me 6 months ago, there's going to be a vaccine and you're going to be able to get it, I would have said, hell no. And, you know, now I'm able to get the vaccine and I'm like, here, where's my arm's right here. You can give it to me, you know, because our ideas and our beliefs evolve based on what we learn and what we know. And then, you know, you can make decisions and make informed decisions. And also I think recognizing and bringing about that, like, I know, like I have friends who don't feel comfortable. And so we do certain things in a certain way, and being able to be respectful of that too, and not to make a judgment of that person, because everybody is in a different place, and to respect that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sure. Anything else? Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Such a pleasure spending time.
Thank you so much for taking your time to do this. We really appreciate this.
Sure.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Yeah. And if there's other questions, feel free to reach out to us by phone or email.
Definitely.
We're here. We're in your community.
And I also put my email in the chat if anybody wants a copy of the PowerPoint, because Deanne has sent it to me. So I'm happy to forward it on to anybody who would like a copy.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to, you know, if you have questions, whatever, we're happy to answer them. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for this opportunity.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. And
Thanks,
I'll
Deb.
I'll
Have a
shut
good
it
night.
down.